Hey everybody, this video is designed to help you study Google's fundamentals training for the Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam. We'll be going through Unit 1, Get Ready to Use Technology in the Classroom, in this video. If you haven't already downloaded your study guide, go ahead and grab it. It's got clickable links and you can fill it out on your computer if you want to, or of course you can print it and fill it in by hand. All right, let's get started by finding our study materials. We're going to Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam. And it's going to be your first link, edu.google.com, and then it's going to take you into that teacher center. Once there, we're going to scroll down and start our teacher training. You'll find yourself in the fundamentals training. You want to log in. I'm not logging in because I've done this before and I don't want my old work to show as I take you guys through this training, but you definitely want to log in and save your progress. Okay, let's get started with Unit 1. My goal here for you guys is going to be to summarize these lessons. I still really recommend that you go back and you read everything and you watch all the videos and you take in all of the information. I'm going to summarize for you and we'll go over the unit review questions at the end so we can kind of get in that Google mindset. What are they looking for when they ask us these questions and how should we respond? Our first unit is going to be about technology and teaching. It's going to talk a lot about the tools that we can use, how to pick the tools that might best suit our situation in our classroom, helping kids make good choices online, and you're going to see a lot of information about how technology can support you as a teacher. In each of these units, they're going to tell you what products they're going to cover, and if you see something you've never used before or that you know you're pretty unfamiliar with, you're going to want to practice using that tool. In this first unit, they're going to do a basic introduction to several Google tools, so they have not given us a specified list. Okay, in the first true lesson, we're going to explore the benefits of the digital classroom and encourage 21st century work habits. Again, I'm going to summarize this for you guys and then take you through the questions and how they should be answered. Google's fundamentals training is not mandatory. You can take the test without it. It's just meant to be a practice guide. And so don't stress. We're not cheating by going over this or looking at these answers. Of course, I'm not able to give you any direct information about the exam because that would violate Google's non-disclosure agreement that you sign when you take the exam. But going over the questions and answers here is totally fine. This section is primarily about getting started with technology in your classroom and how it impacts our lives and the kids' lives. Google really wants to reinforce the idea that the world now is digital, that kids have access to lots of technology in their life and you have lots of access in yours, and that it's changing our lives in many ways. It may no longer be as important to do lots and lots and lots of rote memorization. We currently have access to research at our fingertips. Now, of course, you and I both know as teachers that that does not mean that background information isn't important. Of course it's important. But this access to technology has changed the way that we teach and the way that kids learn. Google will ask you to think about the way that technology has impacted your life, and they give you some basic examples like smartphones and podcasts and Google Maps and how you can learn anything by checking out YouTube, or maybe you want to go to another online platform that provides learning videos. In fact, you're learning from this video right now. It also talks about how you might organize yourself or save time with technology. You're going to make task lists on your phone. You don't write letters anymore. We all use email, things like that. So they're just really trying to drive home this idea that we all are heavy technology users, even if we don't perceive ourselves as such. And then they ask us, what have we seen people doing with technology in the classroom that we would be interested in? And they bring up, of course, their own tools: Google Drawings, Google Docs, Google Maps, and Google Slides. And they provide examples of ways those have been used in classrooms to help facilitate student learning. They also provide a video for you to watch where an educator describes how technology impacts her and how it might affect teaching. I do recommend that you watch these. They're usually very short, so when you're in this training yourself, just go ahead and click that play button. In this next area, Google wants you to start thinking about ways that you might integrate technology into your own classes. So they bring up problems and solutions that can be technology based. If you think about your own life, problems might include things like students not getting timely feedback on papers, or grading takes a really long time, or you feel like your classes are too teacher directed, or you want kids to collaborate more. They bring up the idea of an authentic audience for student work. And all these problems they bring up can be solved by some implementation of technology in the classroom. We can get papers and feedback back to kids more quickly if we do it online. Of course, Google's entire suite of tools is designed for collaboration, so they're going to focus on that. We can provide authentic audiences by having kids do things like create online portfolios or blog posts or websites. So they just want us thinking about the way that technology might impact our kids and how it can help them be better learners. Now we get down to the question. If this is your first time taking the Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam, a large portion of the exam for you will be multiple choice questions. There's also a very large practical component. It's a 3-hour test, so all of it feels long, but you will be answering multiple choice questions before you go into showing that you can actually use and manipulate the online tools. So let's go over these questions, kind of get in that Google headspace. What do they want us to say? And what do they expect us to have learned from this lesson? All right, our first question is, which of the following has had a large impact on education now that the internet is so easily accessible? The options they give us are: students no longer need to be able to calculate things as computers can do it. The role of rote learning has decreased as students have instant access to the world's knowledge. Schools must move to project-based learning to keep students engaged, and computer science is an important subject even with younger students. Those are our options. One thing to notice here is that there are little circles next to the answer options instead of squares. Circles mean pick one answer. Squares mean pick all answers that apply. In this case, of course, we want students to still be able to calculate. Background knowledge is still important. While we hear a lot about project-based learning and we may use it in our own classrooms, this lesson wasn't really about project-based learning. So schools must move to project-based learning to keep students engaged is also not going to be our answer. Computer science is an important subject even with younger students. This response is really neither here nor there. This lesson wasn't about teaching computer science to all age levels. So what they want us to focus on is the role of rote learning has decreased as students have instant access to the world's knowledge. That means they don't have to memorize every little thing because they do have access to research and they can use the information they gain during research to solve problems. So we'll select that answer and it gives you the ability to check. Okay, our next question is, how does technology help cater to individual student needs? And this is a question with little squares, so that means we need to select all the answers that are correct. This question is a little bit tricky. Our options are: access to technology impacts learning more than teaching. Resources can be personalized for students. Teachers can write code that makes students behave better, and students can take ownership of their learning. Obviously, the third one, teachers can write code that makes students behave better, is silly, so we'll let that one go. Now let's look at the other three. Access to technology impacts learning more than teaching. I feel like that is a very poorly phrased response. What they're trying to say is that students' access to technology is going to allow them to take ownership of their learning, that they're going to be able to research to find answers to apply knowledge, and that we even as adults use technology to build our skills. You're on YouTube looking through this right now. I do classes on SKILLSHARE so that I can learn more about productivity, things like that. We're all learning all the time, and technology really impacts that. So while poorly phrased, especially as a teacher, I'm like, impacts learning more than teaching. That doesn't feel right. That is an answer they're looking for. So we'll go ahead and click that. Resources can be personalized for students is an obvious one. We are more easily able to make quick tweaks that allow our resources to work for individuals. So we'll go ahead and select that one. And then students can take ownership of their learning. That's the end goal. We want them to be learners, not just to be trying to get a grade. And they can much more easily do that if they have access to tools that allow them to research and give them access to authentic audiences. So we'll select that one as well. We'll hit check answer, and we just got that one correct. Okay, next question. Choose the statement that best reflects what we know about technology, teaching, and learning. This is a circles question, so we're looking for one response. Our options are: access to technology impacts learning more than teaching. Teachers must become experts with technology in order to support student learning. Technology is a tool to support teachers in their efforts to increase student learning, or learning cannot succeed without technology. Even though this first answer, access to technology impacts learning more than teaching, was something we just chose, there is a much better option here. So we're going to leave that one behind. Teachers must become experts with technology in order to support student learning. Well, that's obviously not true. We don't have to be experts to be able to use it to help the kids. I've taught Lego robotics in my science class the last couple of years. I am definitely not a robotics expert, but it is a tool we're able to use to support student learning. So that one can't be true. We don't have to be experts. Next, technology is a tool to support teachers in their efforts to increase student learning. Well, yeah, that's exactly what we want it to be. We want it to support us, we want it to support our kids, and we want it to be a tool. It's not an end goal, it's a tool. So that one's a good choice. Let's just look at our final one. Learning cannot succeed without technology. Obviously, people were learning long before Google. So we're going to back up to technology is a tool to support teachers and select that one. Check our answer and we are correct. All right, number 4. Which of the following describes a digital classroom? And this is a squares question, so we're checking all that apply. The first option is a place where teachers are facilitators of learning. Then a place where students use technology to collaborate and communicate in authentic ways. A place where students have access to online resources that they can use to solve problems. Or a place where every student is working alone on a device, a laptop or tablet for the entire day. We're going to check everything that applies to this question. So what describes a digital classroom? Well, teachers are facilitators of learning definitely describes a digital classroom. Technology used to collaborate and communicate in authentic ways describes a digital classroom. Students having access to online resources to solve problems describes a digital classroom. The only one that's not true is that students are all working alone. We just saw discussion of collaboration. We know that Google's tools are built for collaboration. So when we're in that mindset of answering these questions, we know that collaboration is one of Google's end goals. Obviously, kids working alone every day on devices is not what they're looking for. And it wouldn't be good practice either. So we'll go ahead and click check answer. We got that one correct. And now we can move on to get familiar with Google tools for the digital classroom. This lesson will be in a separate video and I hope to see you there. Hey guys, welcome to the study session for Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam. In this video, we'll be going over the second part of Unit 1, Get Familiar with Google Tools for the Digital Classroom. My name is Ashley, and I have both Google Educator certifications, Level 1 and Level 2, and I found that they were both extremely helpful in supporting my career and helping me make better decisions with tech in my classroom. So let's get started with that second lesson. Okay, we are in the Google Fundamentals training. If you missed it, there is a video with the introduction and the first lesson already covered. If you would like easy access to these lessons, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and you can comment below telling me what sort of material you would like to see to help you prepare for these exams. We're going to click Get Familiar with Google Tools for the Digital Classroom. All right, I'm going to summarize this information for you, but I would recommend that you go ahead and read and research all of this yourself at some point. And then we'll go over the questions at the end. Google provides example questions for you, and we'll go over the correct answers and why they are correct. This lesson focuses on just giving you a quick overview of the Google tools that you might expect to use in your classroom. It doesn't go in depth about any of the tools, but just gives you basics on what they are and how you might use them, and it encourages you to think about why you might use these tools and how you might implement them in your classroom, as well as what tools would be most appropriate for you. You'll see at the beginning that they're talking about Google Workspace for Education. That used to be called G Suite, so if you're used to hearing people say G Suite, it's the same thing. They renamed it in 2021, so it's now called Google Workspace for Education. And it has a lot of tools in it that are very relevant to educators. The first one, and one you might be using on a really regular basis, is Google Classroom. It's really a content management system for your classroom. It allows you to add assignments and materials, post grades, give feedback, access student work. You can add co-teachers, you can post announcements and host student discussions. It's Google's all-in-one place to run your classroom. The next tool they discuss is Google Drive. Google Drive holds all of your files. Some people use Google Classroom without ever really delving into their Drive, but Drive is the place where all your files are stored. And if you've been using Classroom without going into Drive, you actually still have a Google Drive, and Classroom has been automatically organizing files there for you. So you may want to go check that out. Inside Google Drive, you can access other tools from Google Workspace for Education. Tools like Docs, Sheets, Forms, Slides, and Drawings. A quick overview of those is that Docs is basically like Word, but Google's version of Word. I'm sure they would not love to hear me say that, but it's a word processor. That's what it is. Google Sheets creates spreadsheets and allows you to analyze information, create charts, things like that. Google Forms allows you to collect information. So notice there's a difference. We're not analyzing it, we're collecting it. And create quizzes, surveys. Google Slides is a presentation tool, kind of like PowerPoint, and Google Drawings is what it sounds like. It's a place where you can create graphics. In addition to these tools, Google wants you to be familiar with Gmail, which is their email application, Google Calendar, which is their calendar application. For teachers, it also provides appointment scheduling capabilities, which is pretty cool. Google Meet, which is their video conferencing. Google Sites, which is their website creation tool, and Google Groups, which allows for group communication. When you leave Google Workspace, there are other tools that are owned by Google that Google would like you to be familiar with and know how to use them educationally. Those include Chrome, which is a browser, YouTube, you know what YouTube is because you're on there right now, most likely, it's video hosting. Google Maps and Google Earth. Google Maps provides maps, but it also provides things like virtual tours, and Google Earth provides satellite images, and they have a lot of features for educators where there are online explorations of various places around the world. And finally, they also have Blogger, which is a blogging platform. It's important to know that Google Workspace for Education is ad-free. So if you're using Workspace for Education, your kids are not going to be targeted for any ads. There's not going to be anything like that. Once you leave Workspace for Education and you go into these other tools, Chrome, YouTube, Google Maps and Earth, and Blogger, those are not guarded by the same rules as Google Workspace for Education. You've left that education ecosystem, and now you're out in the rest of Google's world, and so your kids may see ads in those types of tools. Okay, now we've done a quick overview of all the tools, and Google's next focus is how do we select the right tools? Well, my first recommendation would be that you need to be familiar with the tools. If you are seeing things that you haven't heard of before or that you've barely used, you're going to want to familiarize yourself with those tools. Log in, try them out, watch some tutorials, and get a feel for how they work. Because remember, a large portion of your exam will be practical skills. There's a lot of multiple choice, but there's also a lot of practical application. You do have to be able to use the tools. For right now, let's talk about what we might use each tool for. The 6 tools they show us are Classroom, Docs, Forms, Slides, YouTube, and Google Search. Of course, for Classroom, you're going to be using that to run a somewhat paperless classroom. You might not go completely paperless, and that's fine, but it does allow you to reduce paper, give and collect assignments, provide materials, provide communication to your students, and you can give feedback. Google likes to emphasize that it is real-time feedback. For Google Docs, of course, that's a word processor. The kids can use it to do really standard things like type essays, but Google is really big on collaboration. So one of the things they suggest here is collaborative stories, making edits, peer writing, and students working through comments and suggestions made by others. Our next tool is Forms. It's a data collection tool. It allows you to give surveys or quizzes. Of course, you might use them to make a Google Forms quiz, but students can also use them to collect data as needed. Those are automatically collected into a Google Sheet, so you don't have to worry about making some sort of separate thing. The data is collected for you. You just have to access it from that sheet. All right, Google Slides is Google's slide tool. You can use it for a lot of different things. Google's always big on collaboration, so you want to keep that in mind. They love the idea of students collaborating on a slide deck and of using the slide deck as not just a presentation tool, but as a place to, again, collaborate and collect information. So you might have students working on individual slides that come together in this group presentation. You might have students doing the same peer editing that we talked about in docs, making comments to each other within the slides. You can even do things in slides like make ebooks. Google wants you to know that you can add hyperlinks within the slide deck. Those are just links to either other slides or things outside the slides. They really want you to know that Google Slides can create this whole experience and be collaborative and engaging. For YouTube, I'm going to assume that you're somewhat familiar with YouTube because you're there. But as a teacher, you can create playlists of videos on a certain topic. You can find a quick hook video, something to grab students' attention and pull them into a lesson. If you're doing flipped classrooms, of course, you can post your own lessons to YouTube. It has a lot of applications. And for certain subjects, like mine, I'm a science teacher, kids need to see it. Reading about it in a textbook isn't adequate. And so if we're not able to access materials, YouTube's a great option for me to show them, for example, what happens when you chuck sodium in water. We can't do that in the classroom. It's super dangerous and we don't have those tools. But I can show them what it would look like. Finally, there's Google Search. Google Search is really, really powerful. And Google wants you to know about their search operators. That's just a way to more effectively use Google Search. So when you're in this lesson, you do want to click that link. It's going to take you through to a better understanding of the operators. Basically, this means ways that you can type into Google Search to get better information or the information you're looking for. For example, if you type site : NewYorkTimes.com, you'll be searching the New York Times website. For older kids, it can actually be really useful as a way of teaching them to access relevant information. You will want to look over these. And finally, Google wants you to think about some ways that you might use these things in your own classroom. They give you examples like creating a playlist of physics videos to engage kids in science class, have kids work on collaborative slides by creating photos and adding them to the slideshow, graphic organizers and drawings, creating collaborative Google sites, or even using something like Blogger to get an authentic audience, and using Google Forms to collect data. Google wants to emphasize collaboration and material creation and utilization of these online resources. Now, let's do the lesson check. We'll go over each question and talk about what the answers are and why they are correct. All right, when selecting a digital tool to integrate into your class, where should you start? The options they give us are with the features of the app, with your learning objectives, with your technology acceptable use policy, and with a project in mind. Just like when we do regular backwards planning, if we were to be planning a non-digital unit, you always want to start with your standards. So we're going to start with what they're calling learning objectives. Those are our standards, and we'll check our answer. That is correct. One thing that Google really kind of wants you to understand is that technology is not the end game. Your learning goal is probably not create a Google Slides presentation. Your learning goal is probably something different that relates to your standards, and you're going to use the digital tool to accomplish that goal. The tool itself isn't usually the goal, unless you are a technology teacher and you had a standard that involves creating digital presentations. All right, which app allows you to analyze data? This question is a little bit tricky. They have Google Sheets, Google Forms, Google Docs, and Google Gmail. They've tucked Sheets and Forms in there together for a reason. They are interrelated applications. Forms collects data, but Sheets analyzes it. And that's a distinction that you'll need to be aware of. So we'll select Google Sheets there, check our answer, and we are correct. Okay, the third question is, if you wanted to create a custom logo for your blog, you could use YouTube, Google Drawings, Google Sheets, or Google Docs. The only tool in there that's going to be capable of graphic design is Google Drawings, so we'll go ahead and select that and check our answer, and it is correct. And the final question is, which is not an advantage of the Google tools? And it shows us a wide array of relevant tools, integrated login, or only available offline. Let's talk about what those things mean. A wide array of relevant tools means that Google provides a whole lot of tools that are relevant to your classroom. Integrated login means that you and the kids can log into other applications using Google, and that once you're logged into Google, you have access to all these different things. So if I'm logged into Classroom, I also have access to my Drive and Sheets and Forms, and I can use Google Login to get to other tools. So you might be using your Google login or you might see the availability of Google login on other sites. So let's say you wanted to go to kahoot.com, you might see the availability to log in through Google. So both those first things are true. We do know that Google tools are not only available offline. Some of them actually are available offline, but primarily they're online tools. So that last one is the only one that's not an advantage. Let's check our answer, and we are correct. All right, our next lesson will be to create safe, responsible digital citizens, and I hope to see you there. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that it's easy for you to find this content. Have an awesome day. Hey guys, my name's Ashley, and in this Google Certified Educator Level 1 exam study session, we're going to be finishing up Unit 1 and going over Create Safe, Responsible Digital Citizens, Think Beyond the Textbook, and the Unit 1 review. If you want to grab a study guide and a place to keep your notes, I have a printable one that you can grab from the video description. All right, let's get started with Create Safe, Responsible Digital Citizens. I'm going to summarize this lesson for you. As always, I would recommend that you go through the lesson in detail yourself, but let's go over the basics. Google wants us to focus on creating digital citizens in our classrooms who understand how to use online resources safely, how to communicate respectfully, and how to respect the usage rights of media. So how not to violate copyright law, what fair use of materials means, things like that. Google says that there's really 3 levels that this needs to be dealt with. There are school-wide policies, and it has links here that you can click to get examples of school-wide policies. Digital citizenship curriculum, which are actual full curricula of lessons that you can teach or use when planning, and there are links again to those. And then what's most relevant to a lot of us who aren't technology teachers but use tech in our classrooms is fostering positive conversations. Google wants us to know that kids need to feel comfortable and safe when talking to their grown-ups or their teachers about what's going on with them online. That these situations and conversations are going to come up in class sometimes while we're using online tools or doing research, and it's a great opportunity for us to step in and teach them things about how to use materials fairly, how to communicate respectfully, how to keep ourselves safe. And again, Google gives you links to resources that you can use to further prepare yourself to do this in class. Now, as usual, they give us a little task to do at the end of this lesson. They want you to consider what you would do if you don't have a digital citizenship program already available. So there is a brainstorming exercise for that. And there's also one if you have an existing digital citizenship program in your school. So now that we know those basics, let's go over the lesson check. Google Meet can help students practice good online communication. Well, we know they're going to be pushing Google Meet as a communication tool because it is their video conferencing service. So we'll go ahead and say true there and check our answer, and that is correct. For the second question, we have what can all teachers do in their classrooms to help shape responsible students? And this is a question with squares, so we need to select everything that applies. We have show students how to create strong passwords, provide opportunities for students to practice good behavior, create a safe environment for talking about digital citizenship topics, and integrate digital citizenship lessons in class. Every one of those sounds like a great way to shape responsible students. We really want to be able to do all of those things with our kids when we're teaching them how to use online resources. So we'll check them all, hit check answer, and we also got that one correct. All right, number 3, building, and then there's a blank, so building what helps students cope better when faced with challenges online. Google's big word here is resilience, and we do see this in our answer bank. The choices are resilience, citizenship, ethics, and privacy. This is a little bit of a tricky question because citizenship, ethics, and privacy are all very important. Those are reasonable answers. But when we talk about coping with challenges, what Google really wants us to know is resilience. Kids are going to see or read things that we maybe don't want them to encounter online. And just like in the real world, they need to develop some resilient skills and know what to do to keep themselves safe and treat others respectfully. So we'll click resilience and then hit check answer, and we are correct. And just so you know, when Google talks about resilience, that doesn't mean that we don't want to do everything we can to keep our kids safe, teach them good password skills, teach them how to stay away from the sketchy parts of the internet. Of course we do. But we want them to have resilience so that if they find themselves in an uncomfortable situation, they know what to do to keep themselves safe and move forward appropriately in the online environment. All right, last question. How can image search be used to teach good online behavior? You have find pictures available online, filter images by usage rights, find images of different sizes, and reverse image search. Again, this is a little bit of a tricky one because reverse image search is a great tool. Finding images of different sizes could be a great tool if you're looking for images to use in design. Finding pictures available online might be necessary for online research. We're talking about good online behavior. What they really mean is that we don't want to violate usage rights. So we're going to select filter images by usage rights, check our answer, and we have all of those correct. Let's move on to think beyond the textbook. This lesson is all about enhancing what you're doing in your classroom with technology. Google wants you to think about how you can use technology to augment your textbook. So it's not that you're necessarily going to completely chuck it out, but what can you do to bring those digital resources into your classroom curriculum to make your curriculum more interesting and richer for the students. There's a video here where a teacher talks about what he does in his classroom. One of the things he talks about is how even though you might have a great textbook, it does become outdated over time, particularly if you're teaching a subject that has a lot of updates. If you're in a social sciences class, or in my case, I'm in a science class, there are new developments, things change. How do we keep up with that, and how do we keep the kids engaged? He talks a lot about using YouTube in his classroom, building YouTube playlists, and how there are all kinds of online resources you can use for that. He talks about using Google Search to find appropriate resources, Google Forms to gauge his students' understanding, and he does talk about the other creators that he uses for relevant content, places like Khan Academy, Crash Course, MIT. All of those places have YouTube videos that allow you to use them in your class, potentially even as flipped lessons. Now Google gives you the opportunity to think of the ways that you might use these kind of things in your classroom to go beyond your textbook, and it tells you what other educators are doing. Things like using Google Search to find relevant content, having students compare their textbook against Wikipedia, collaboratively building study guides, again, Google's big on collaboration, collaboratively building a Google site to use as a study resource, and using Google Sheets and Flippity.net to create study resources in the form of flashcards. Okay, let's do our lesson check. Number 1, which of the following are drawbacks of using a textbook? Select all that apply. This is a squares question. We're going to select more than one. Our options are textbooks can become out of date, textbooks don't have interactive components, textbooks include graphs and charts, and textbooks don't have links to current events. We're looking for drawbacks. So textbooks can become out of date, they're not interactive. And then textbooks don't have links to current events is a drawback, so we'll select that one. That gives us 3 of the 4 selected. We'll check the answer and we are correct. Next, which tool allows a teacher to put together a collection of videos on a specific topic? We have YouTube playlists, Google Sheets, Google Meet, and Google Docs. Our best option there is YouTube playlists. Number 3, one benefit of augmenting a course textbook with digital resources is, our options are cost less, solves discipline issues, increases student engagement, or reduces paper use. They like to throw one in here that is a little bit more tricky because it does cost less and it does reduce paper use. So those two are true, but this lesson focused primarily on student engagement. So we'll select increases student engagement, and that is the correct answer. The last one, in what ways could students become partners with the teacher in augmenting the textbook with digital resources? And we're going to select all that apply. Our options are students could build a Google site of current events that link to the curriculum. Students could suggest YouTube videos that connect to the course content. Students could generate online flashcards or study guides with links to external content, or students can role play events in the curriculum. Even though it may seem like all of those could be reasonable options, remember that we're thinking about digital resources. All of these include digital resources except role-playing events. So we will select the other 3, check our answer, and we are correct. Now let's go ahead to the Unit 1 review. And I'm not going to give you the answers to these because I do want you to have the opportunity to genuinely practice these questions when you log in. But we will talk about the questions, and I'll give you some ways to think about them that will help you make your best answer choices. And if you do the practice and you don't do as well as you had expected, don't stress. This score isn't shared with anybody, it's not a public score, and it's not your real test. It really is just practice and an opportunity for you to see how you're doing. So let's go over some useful review and thoughts for this, and then give it a try on your own and see how you do. Remember that you can retake the test anytime if you're not pleased with the score that you get. Okay, question 1. Your learning objective is to get students to understand the concept of projection when speaking. Where can you find video resources from professional speakers who record and share their own public performances? You want to pay attention to the way that they word these questions. You're going to be looking for resources and you're looking for video resources. So that should help you determine the response to that question. Number 2. Ms. Jones is a 7th grade teacher who is focused on making sure her students are doing everything they can to be safe and secure online. They go to the computer lab each week and do a lot of web browsing on sites that she's gathered links for on a shared Google Doc. Students add their own notes and comments below each link as they do their research. They can also add new resources as they find them on the internet. Which of the following contemporary skills is Mrs. Jones developing, and her students select all that apply? We are meant to select more than one answer here, and I'll tell you that this question is a little bit tricky. The key is thinking about contemporary skills. To be fair, communication, community, collaboration, and creativity are really all skills that have been needed at all times. So that question may take you more than one go. But you really want to think about what's Google's focus? What are the couple of things that they really might be looking for? Because we do have to take this through a Google-centric lens. What values are important to them, and that will help you, not just on this question, but on all questions. Number 3, what are ways students can ensure that their information is not saved in their Chrome browser when they are done in the computer lab each day? Select all that apply, and you're going to want to choose any correct response to that question. Think about what's going to actually make them not have a browsing history, because that will get you much farther with that question. Okay, number 4, which of the following tools are part of Google's Workspace for Education Fundamentals and thus covered by the Google Workspace for Education Fundamentals Terms of Service? Which of those tools are actually within Google Workspace for Education? Question 5, when trying to select the right tool to integrate into your classes, you should always start with. Our options are the learning goal, an idea from a trusted colleague, the functionality of the tool, or a help site. This is again a question from our first study session. Think about how you should start planning any lesson. It should really be your starting point. Number 6, parents are looking for guidance on what to tell their children about being safe online. If you could give 3 simple tips that underline everything, what would they be? And you're going to select all that apply. Our options are avoid the first site in the search results, respect yourself and others, do everything you can to protect yourself, and don't click on items from unknown senders. They were very awesome here because they told us we're looking for 3. So eliminate the one that doesn't make sense and you will be in good shape. Number 7, what are some benefits of using online resources in curriculum? Select all that apply. Can be linked to related content, updated content, content can be engaged with to extend learning, and online content is reliable and accurate. So we just covered this. In the previous lesson, we talked about advantages of online resources. And when looking at this question, you also want to think about what is true, and that will help you on that one. Finally, question 8, rather than just reading about a location in a textbook, a great tool to help visualize a location and consider its impact on history would be, and our options are YouTube, Google Maps, Google Docs, and Google Search. I think that one should be relatively straightforward. They're asking you about location. So go ahead, log in, take that test, take it as many times as you need to, and get comfortable with the questions. When you pass, it's time to start Unit 2. I'll have a study session up for that, and I hope to see you there. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that it's easy for you to find this content again. Have a great day.